Ever feel like you're like the only one on crypto Twitter who hasn't turned into a millionaire overnight?
Yeah. Yeah, I know that feeling.
Like everyone's celebrating these massive gains and you're just sitting there wondering, what about me?
Right. Like, am I missing out on something?
Exactly. And chances are what you're witnessing is the wild world of alt season.
Ah, yes. Alt season. That magical time when it seems like every cryptocurrency except Bitcoin decides to take a rocket ship to the moon.
And we're not just going to throw that term around. Today, we're diving deep into what actually drives those price swings. We're talking about the money flow cycle in the crypto market.
Because let's be real, just blindly following hype is a recipe for, well, potential disaster.
It's like trying to surf without understanding the currents, right?
100%. You might catch a wave or two by chance, but if you really want to ride those waves like a pro, you need to know what's going on beneath the surface.
I like that analogy. And luckily for us, our sources today gave us a pretty clear picture of how this whole money flow thing works. And they actually compared it to, well, water.
Makes sense. It's all about flow, right?
Exactly. And it all starts with Bitcoin.
Bitcoin, the OG crypto, of course. What happens when Bitcoin starts to climb?
Well, everyone wants a piece of the action, right?
Exactly. So people start pouring their money into Bitcoin, hoping to ride that wave up. But then what? What do they do with those Bitcoin profits?
They look for the next big thing.
You got it. It's like a ripple effect. Those Bitcoin gains start flowing into the more established altcoins, the
Yeah.
big players like Ethereum and so on.
So it's like moving from the safety of the shore to like testing out the deeper waters.
Exactly. And as those larger altcoins start to see gains, that's when things get even wilder.
So we're talking people riding that wave of momentum, chasing those gains from bigger altcoins into the smaller, potentially more volatile ones.
You got it. It's like a chain reaction fueled by, let's be honest, a healthy dose of FOMO.
Yeah.
Everyone wants in on that action, hoping to find that next Bitcoin level explosion.
Yeah, that fear of missing out is real, I get it. But trying to perfectly time those market swings, that's got to be incredibly difficult.
Borderline impossible. One of our sources actually had a great analogy for it. They said trying to time the market perfectly is like trying to, get this, chase butterflies in a hurricane.
Okay, that's vivid. I can see the appeal of chasing those butterflies, all those potential gains swirling around, but also the sheer, like, impossibility of catching them all.
Exactly. You might get lucky here and there, but it's more likely to leave you feeling frustrated and, honestly, a little bit lost.
So how do you avoid making those impulsive decisions, especially with FOMO constantly whispering in your ear?
Our sources had some really solid advice for this, and it actually revolves around two main strategies. First up, holding a long-term Bitcoin position.
Okay, so not necessarily going all in on Bitcoin, but more like having a portion of your portfolio dedicated to it.
Exactly. It's about establishing a solid foundation, something you're comfortable holding for the long haul, maybe even decades.
So kind of like having a safety net while you're exploring these other potentially riskier opportunities.
I like that analogy. This Bitcoin position acts like an anchor in those choppy crypto waters. It's that whole digital gold concept you often hear about.
Makes sense. And the second strategy.
Scaling in and out of your altcoin positions gradually.
So instead of like putting all your eggs in one basket, you're saying spread that risk around a bit, dip your toes in a few different pools.
Exactly. Especially when we're talking about altcoins.
Because those can be way more volatile than like good old Bitcoin, right?
No, absolutely. You can definitely see much more dramatic swings with altcoins.
And our sources really emphasize that whole risk factor, especially with those smaller altcoins.
It's true. The further you stray from, like you said, good old Bitcoin, the more unpredictable things can get.
I feel like there's an analogy there. Like it's the difference between, I don't know, driving down a well-lit highway versus like bushwhacking through a jungle at night.
Ooh, I like that. And the thing is with those smaller altcoins, there's just less liquidity, right? Meaning it takes fewer people, or shall we say, a smaller group of actors to really move that price around.
So it's easier to manipulate those markets.
You could say that, which is why diversification is absolutely key if you're going to play in those waters.
Don't put all your faith in one single project. Got it.
Spread that risk around. Look at a bunch of different altcoins. And think about how much risk you're actually comfortable with. Do you want those slow and steady gains? Or are you ready to buckle up for a wild ride?
You know, speaking of managing that risk, one of our sources mentioned something pretty interesting. They were talking about holding stable coins.
Stable coins.
Yeah.
Your safe haven in the storm.
Exactly. Like holding some stable coins would let you jump on those big buying opportunities when the market dips, right?
Exactly. Think of it like having, A reserve fund. You're ready to pounce on a moment's notice. No hesitation.
It's like having that cash ready to go when, I don't know, you find that rare antique you've always wanted and it's suddenly on sale.
Love that. It lets you be strategic, not emotional, which we have already established as key in this space.
For sure. So, okay, we've got our Bitcoin foundation. We're diversifying across different altcoins. We're managing our risk and maybe even keeping some stable coins on hand. But how do we actually spot those opportunities? Our sources seem to be big fans of technical analysis, looking at charts and all that.
Oh, 100%. Charts are your friend.
But they're not like predicting the future, right?
No crystal ball, unfortunately. But you can spot patterns, get a sense of the market's mood. It's like,
We're reading the room at a party.
Yes, exactly. You can feel the vibe, see who's talking to who, maybe get a sense of what might happen next.
Okay, I like that. And when it comes to reading the room in the crypto market, what should we be paying attention to?
Our sources pointed to two biggies. First up, the ETH-BTC trading pair. So basically, we're looking at how Ethereum is performing compared to Bitcoin.
Okay. And why is that pairing so important?
Well, it's kind of like a risk barometer.
Mm.
When traders are feeling bullish on altcoins, optimistic, adventurous, and dream, they tend to move away from Bitcoin, that perceived safe haven, and into Ethereum.
So if Ethereum is climbing faster than Bitcoin, that's a good sign for altcoins in general.
It can be, yeah. It suggests that money is flowing into altcoins and things could be heating up, but, and this is a big but, it's just one indicator.
You always have to look at the bigger picture.
Always.
And I'm guessing that's where Bitcoin dominance comes in, right? This whole idea of how much of the total crypto market cap is actually Bitcoin. So it's like a giant tug of war. When Bitcoin dominance is high, it's holding steady, but when it starts to drop, that means money is flowing out to the altcoins, potentially signaling the start of an alt season.
You got it. It's all about watching that balance of power shift. High Bitcoin dominance, things might cool down a bit for altcoins. But when it starts to dip, that's when things could get spicy.
This is fascinating. We've gone from understanding how money flows through the market to actually identifying some of those key signs to watch for. But one thing our sources kept emphasizing is that this whole thing is a cycle. What goes up
must come down, which means knowing when to, maybe take some profits off the table is just as important as knowing when to ride that wave up.
They actually left us with a really thought-provoking question. They asked, what signals might actually suggest that an alt season is coming to an end?
It's all about connecting the dots, right? Putting those detective hats on.
Okay, so if we're thinking back to those indicators we discussed earlier, ETH-BTC, Bitcoin dominance, those could offer clues here, right?
Absolutely. We said a surging Ethereum compared to Bitcoin might mean alt season is heating up. Well, what happens when that trend reverses?
So if Ethereum's growth starts to slow down relative to Bitcoin.
Could be a warning sign.
Yeah.
And same with Bitcoin dominance. If we see that start to climb back up.
That could mean the party's winding down.
Exactly. And, it's not just about the numbers themselves. Pay attention to the overall market sentiment. Remember how we talked about risk appetite?
Yeah, like how willing people are to jump into those, let's say, more adventurous investments.
Exactly. When that sentiment starts to shift, when people get nervous, you might see less money flowing into those riskier altcoins.
It's wild how much psychology plays into all of this.
Oh, for sure. News events, regulations, even the overall economy, all of these things can impact how people feel about risk and where they ultimately decide to put their money.
So it's not just about, memorizing a few chart patterns. It's about understanding the forces driving those patterns, those underlying currents that influence everything.
100%. It's about being informed, being observant, being a crypto detective.
I love it. Well, I think we've definitely given our listeners a lot to think about today. We talked about how money flows through the crypto market, the importance of diversification, managing risk, and even spotted a few key technical indicators to watch.
And remember, this is just the tip of the iceberg. The crypto world is constantly evolving, which is part of what makes it so exciting.
So true. So keep exploring, keep learning, and as always, do your own research. And hey, maybe we'll see you riding that next alt season wave. But this time with your eyes wide open.